This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And I am beyond thrilled and excited to launch 2023's season of the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast with a guest that we have had on before. He's back in the archive if you want to go and scroll back up. But this is somebody that I'm hoping will be familiar to those who are very prominent and very into building the best mindset, looking at their personal development and basically just wanting to learn things from somebody who's been there and done it. This person probably needs no introduction, but I'm going to let him do that anyway. This is Chris O'Connell. Welcome back to you today, Chris. How are you?
Leisha, thank you so much. I'm really well and absolutely honoured and humbled to be on for a second time. I'm delighted. Thank you for having me. And the first one of 2023 as well.
Absolutely. We're recording this while it's still 2022, but this will be going out in January 2023. So I'm hoping as you're listening to this now, you're feeling energized, you're feeling really motivated, and you're feeling really ready to learn something from this episode, because I'm sure you are. But there might be somebody listening, because we have got a global audience who don't actually know who you are and what you do. So can you give us a brief intro as to what you do?
I'd love to, yeah. 25 years recruitment experience, 5 years at SThree, the worldwide top biller there, making nearly a million quid a year, built teams, knocked it out of the park, loved it. Left there, set up my own business in 2003, got up to 100 people, 3 offices, 14 awards, £25 million turnover, phenomenal business. Sold that through private equity, took some time out, had some difficulties with mental health, which I've been vocal about, used that as a guide and fuel to come back into the sector. Now I'm a serial and seasoned and well-referenced and well-recommended NED, got a great NED portfolio, podcast host, mental health advocate, and loving life, basically.
Absolutely. And you're just all around lovely person. I think one of the things is I've got to know you over it's only really been the last 2.5 years, really, that you're just somebody that's happy to talk about the things that a lot of people will be thinking, particularly our audience who are leaders. You will say things that maybe others are thinking and feeling but don't want to say. Your sense of vulnerability, I've gone all goosebumpy because it is absolutely, heartwarming, mind-blowing, the things that you've shared. I mean, I've listened to a lot of you've obviously got your own podcast, but you've also been on plenty of people's across the spectrum, and you're always very consistent with what you talk about. So we're going to cover quite a lot today. So I do want to sort of crack on, because one of the things that's your I guess your strapline for base mindset is purpose-led leadership and behaviours. What do you actually mean by purpose-led? Because it gets talked about all the time as a kind of possibly empty platitude. So I just want to be clear as to what you mean by that. And what
I think a lot of people think it's an empty platitude, but having lived and breathed, having all the material things, being a multimillionaire, the car, the watches, the houses, all the accolades I could ever have, I didn't have a purpose back then. And when I lost it all, it forced me to look inward and look at my why. And everyone says, oh, this why stuff's all fluffy. But for me, if you haven't got a purpose, you haven't got a direction, you haven't got a direction, you haven't got fulfillment, you haven't got fulfillment, you're one of these people, and there's probably 89% of the people or the population that go through the motions. They wake up, they do their work, they go home, they spend the money, and there's no reason behind it. So for me, purpose-led leadership is understanding what and why you're doing what you're doing, having a destination, and your purpose can evolve and it can move and it can shake, making your decisions and basing your decisions on your values as well. As we know, recruitment companies, they love their values on their wall, on their website. Most of them are pretty much exactly the fucking same, if I can swear. So I just have, sorry. But until you really understand what your values are and you believe in them and you actually live and breathe them, I don't think you can get that level of happiness and joy. So for me, purpose is fundamental to your success. And if you get your purpose right, you get your profit as well.
Yeah, no, I think the two are totally aligned to each other. And I think if we'd have recorded this pre-pandemic, there would have been a lot of eye rolling.
Right.
I think people's perspectives have changed, and that goes for you leaders listening too, in that you've had to probably dig deeper than most people. You've had to steer your business through, COVID was unprecedented, quite literally.
Yes, of course.
We're now in a recession, officially in a recession, which, who knows what the long-term impact will be on the economy, but also in terms of your purposes. And I like that you say that it's, it can be an intangible thing, but actually it's something that defines you as a leader. What I want to pick up on there as well then is that, you and I are both servicing the same industry, both servicing recruitment industry. How important is it then for those leaders listening, and then for any recruiters listening, in terms of choosing a future employer, to hire based on those the purpose and the value?
Well, I think it's really important. We're heading for a recession. I'm sure we're going to talk about that as well. And I think that, you know, you've got to look after your existing customers, you've got to look after your existing employees. And, you know, when you're choosing an employer, I think that it's a bit like choosing a partner in a way. You know, if you keep making the same mistakes, it's about why do you want to get into this relationship? You know, is it, you know, if you talk about relationships, is it just for sex, or do you want a long-term relationship? When you talk about a business, is it just for the money? And if it's just for the money, after a while, things can fall apart and you lose the fulfillment. You end up leaving anyway and you have to start the whole thing again. So ask questions of your employer, ask questions of your employee, and just get to know the human side of that person. Because there are businesses out there are employees out there, and there are employers out there that offer this purpose, this growth, this development, and pay the good money as well. So I think be curious, ask questions. If you're in an interview and the interviewee is not willing to answer your questions, that's a red flag.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the same goes the other way. I think it's got to be a two-way process. I think that analogy will resonate with every human being listening. Because very often I think in recruitment, especially, we've had a very buoyant, despite COVID, because it was propped up by furlough, we've had a very buoyant market for the last decade. I can say that as a Rexrec that's done 20 years. You are about to witness an experience. If you've been in recruitment if you've not been in recruitment pre 2008, you are in for a shock. And so being in an environment where you you believe in the purpose of the business and the vision of the leaders, and leader you've hired people in based on that, you will grit together and you will work through it because you all share that purpose, don't you? And I think it's having complementary and symbiotic values. So you're just hiring on ethics or whatever.
And then it no longer becomes a job or a transaction. It becomes something that you actually enjoy, and you go to work every day, you get more fulfillment, you end up then getting promoted and being part of it. And it's slow down to speed up. Money is important, but when you actually do, and I've done the research, the reason why people join businesses is because they join the people, but money is about third on the list. It's all this other stuff. And a lot of people don't believe me, but it's absolutely true.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. You just shared that recently on LinkedIn about slow down to speed up. And I just thought, I'm stealing that at some point. But it's obviously gone into the ether of my brain somewhere. I do think in life that's a lesson every single person. Maybe it's because I'm getting older, I'm heading towards the big five, and I think you just naturally do slow down a little bit more. But actually, you are so much more productive by doing that. So that's a very good life lesson hack there from Chris. You are just full of wisdoms, and I think
but also, sorry, just on that point, interrupt you a little bit there. Sorry. I think where people go wrong is they treat their life as part of their career, but your career is part of your life. It's a big difference. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, oh, totally. I was going to say that's about creating joy and contentment. And you've talked about joy. I think you've said the word joy twice already. And why isn't that something that we're all talking about? Why aren't we trying to create environments where we all experience joy? Because that's what the human experience should be about. It's our default setting.
I totally agree. But when you start to quantify money as joy, that's when money can create happiness for a short term, and it's really important. Don't get me wrong, you have to have a relationship with money, and it's really important. But there's other stuff out there that can give you that real higher level of purpose and joy. Definitely.
That leads very nicely to the next question, really, which is, obviously your business's base mindset is to sort of help people develop winning mindsets and successful mindsets. So how much do you think behaviour mindset does equate to success, particularly in recruitment?
Well, actually, BASE stands for behaviours, attitudes, skills and experience. So I believe behaviours and attitudes are more important, or just as important as skills and experience. Yeah, so that was the fundamental core value and the reason why I set up the business, because I've hired people with enormous amount of skills and experience. Don't get me wrong, skills and experience are really, really important. But unless you've got that right work ethic, behaviours, attitudes and mindset, it doesn't matter how skilled you are, how experienced you are, you're not going to succeed.
And then, so on that basis, if we're thinking about behaviours, do you think that there are core things? You used a word before that I don't think is talked about enough. In recruitment, you have to be resilient and you have to be a natural salesperson. But I think curiosity is so undervalued as a skill and as a behaviour that we should all be looking at, seeking.
Yeah, I mean, when I interview someone, my assessment is more often than not based on the questions that they ask as opposed to the answers they give. And I think when someone's asking me questions, A, they're showing an interest, and B, that they've got a willingness to learn. And it's the same with anything. When I start to ask questions, even on the post that I make on LinkedIn, you're asking for feedback. You're asking for a conversation. That's how you generate relationships. That's how you build relationships. So curiosity is really important, but I think also accountability and self-awareness is really important as a leader and as an employer looking for an employee. You want someone to be humble enough to understand that they're weak in some areas and willing to learn. So I think self-awareness, accountability, and curiosity, as you say, if we said these things 5 years ago, it would be laughed at. But believe me, the world has changed more in the last 5 years than it has in the last 50, I think, on what makes a good leader and a good employer and a good employer.
It's totally transformed, and it's and to me, it's creating a much kinder, calmer, more creative space. And I'm talking specifically recruitment, of course. And I do think, I mean, I'm 24 years into recruitment now, and it's transformed. I mean, just short of you. We both started recruiting when we were at primary school. It's definitely, I think if I'd have said that at the start of my rectorate career, I'm looking for, this is who I am, and I'm curious, and it wasn't about sales, I'd have been laughed out of the park. So I do think it's right. And I think self-awareness is something that a lot of people don't have. And think they have, but this is in context. So for leaders, it's how you deliver feedback. It's, being aware enough to ask for constructive feedback, taking it on board, listening it, and being prepared to give it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not asking somebody to do something you're not prepared to do yourself as well. And I think it's understanding that as a leader, you are serving your people. You really are. If you give them the support, tools, direction, and guidance, they'll give you that in spades. And I think sometimes it's knowing what hat to wear, when, and to whom. Sometimes you have to be kind. Sometimes you have to give them a bit of a rocket up the arse. But it's about appropriate approaches, isn't it? And a one-size-fits-all approach never works. But I always say manage the individual, not the team. Everyone's slightly different, aren't they? And a good leader can understand that.
It's like parenting. You wouldn't parent the same way, would you? So you going back to that comment, I just picked up on a word there. Are you recommending servant leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. I think these days, I think you have to be a leader. And someone said to me on one of my posts, well, it's all about manage the process. Everything falls into place. Yes, you have to have the process, but unless you're in tune on a human level with your people, then you have to have the soft skills, but the processes are important as well. Definitely.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we've had a guest on previously. I can't remember who it was now, but we talked, the whole episode was about servant leadership. So sorry to that guest. I can't remember who it is. That's very rude, very, very, very rude of me. So, I mean, your experience as a non-exec director, you will have plenty of leaders approaching you. We haven't prepared for this question, but I'm just curious. When you're assessing whether you're the right person to support them in their business, do you use these behaviours to assess whether
absolutely.
So as in, do you walk away from companies and go, look, you're not self-aware enough for me, you've not got the right behaviour?
100%. I mean, without sort of being too big-headed, because of the work I've done on LinkedIn and my success, I am approached quite a lot every single week, and I have lots of calls, and I call it a discovery session. And very quickly, as you might imagine, in 25 years, I've interviewed thousands and thousands of people, so I've got a good inkling of what someone is about. And if they're showing me signs of blame, pointing fingers, not taking accountability, I will tell them straight, and I say, look, unless we can make an agreement where you change this, and this, I don't think we're a match. And I think that's a really, really powerful thing to do. And it's a difficult thing to do, particularly if you're in a position where you need the business. But I'm telling you, if you needed the business, you took that business on, you'd have more pain, headaches, and problems than you would do if you just didn't take the business on, and there's someone else behind that would come in. And so I think it's about whatever role you're in, it goes back to that purpose and those values. Try to avoid getting into those situations. I mean, look at the red flags and walk away.
Yeah, and do you know what? I'm so pleased that I've asked you that question, because we can pick up this and you can put that in context if you're listening now and you've got a client that's making you feel uncomfortable.
Oh my God.
Coming to you with toxicity, you're getting candidates getting no feedback, they're not self-aware enough in the interview to sort of see it as a two-way process. It could be that you've had a one-to-one with your leader and they've not given you constructive feedback, and blaming you, or you've got a recruiter who's maybe not performing, but they're blaming the market and not looking at what they do. So actually, I think that is a golden nugget of how to sort of be aware of what's a symbiotic relationship, whether it's a client, an employee, or a leader.
in business and in life. But what I will say is that this is going to sound a bit paradoxical. Don't take it personally, because it's a reflection on them, not on you. Even at my level, I'm an NED. I've got 15 different businesses that I'm kind of running. I've had a couple of clients very, very recently that have treated me like shit, or they've been very toxic, even though I'm this kind of like guy. And what I'm saying, it can happen to anybody. And I was very, very strong, and I walked away from a couple of them. I think it's agnostic. It doesn't matter how senior you are, how much experience you've got. You're going to encounter this stuff, whether it's jealousy or fear or shame, but try not to take it personally.
No, I think that's really good advice. And look, I mean, I'm responding to this as somebody who is older and has experienced more life. I think you gain more of a, and I'm going to swear now, which I don't think I've very often done it, I don't give a fuck mentality. I think you do gain that more as you get older, and life throws stuff at you. But if you're listening to this and you're, quite new in your career, but you're feeling that you've got the courage and conviction to do that, actually, it's doing it in a way where it's professional. I think that's really important. It's never personal. Don't you take it personally, but also be professional in how you're then sort of professing why you're not going to progress forward with, whether it's an interview, whether it's a client. Really, that's really, really valuable. Now, we said at the start of this interview that we're going to be launching this for 2023. So I don't know if you've got a crystal ball in that beautiful house of yours, but what do you think leaders need to be preparing for 2023 to ensure that they not only survive, but thrive through whatever the economy throws at us?
Well, it's a really good question. I think it goes back to the word curiosity. What I mean by that is I would be asking my existing customers, what are their pain points, going to meet them, asking more questions. So we're all trying to get new business, but let's look after what we do have at the moment. I think that's a really, really important point. But also our colleagues as well, not just our customers. Collaborate. If you haven't done this kind of thing before, ask the most junior members of staff for ideas, ask the most senior members of staff, have a bit of a united front to this, because actually bringing people in, getting their perspective can create harmony, can create, collaboration and new ideas. But also, I've talked about customer service, but some people don't like the phrase personal branding. I think it's so important that whether you call it personal branding or whatever you call it, that you promote yourself as an individual as much as you can. Get that video out there. People are going to buy from people, and it could be the difference in a difficult year or two ahead. If you're being a bit vulnerable, the majority of the business I've won, hasn't just been because of my experience. Like, I won a massive piece of business in New York last week, because I commented about parental alienation on LinkedIn and I showed my vulnerability, and the guy was like, wow, I want to get you on board. So it's all that kind of stuff. It's that human stuff. And I know that sounds that doesn't sound very specific, but I think you can have all the protests. I can tell you to work harder. I can tell you I can do all the operational stuff, but I actually think it's more of the human getting in touch and being personal.
Well, I couldn't have asked you to come up with a better answer than that, because you are talking to the original, I will just share everything. I think. But I want to say this with a caveat, because I'm very, very aware that not everybody is happy to share personal stuff like you have. I mean, you and I probably shared equal stories. I've talked about my daughter getting bullied. I've talked about me being a solo parent. My husband coming out as gay. I've talked about my sobriety. I've talked about my first divorce when my husband had left me when I was 24. But not a lot of people want to share that. And we're not saying you share or air all what you you're doing, but talk about how you're feeling. You can talk about an experience or a situation. But I absolutely cannot, emphasize enough that what Chris has just said there is your recipe for success, certainly on LinkedIn. It's going to become even more powerful in 2023. And as leaders, don't think you're immune to using your personal brand out there. It can still be consistent with what your company's sharing, but if you're not putting yourself out there, you will it will be, who are you?
And just on that point as well, I think that try and have a morning routine. What I mean by that is get yourself right first so you can serve the others. So what I'm trying to say is, in a very difficult climate, if your mindset's all over the place, or you're not eating right, you're not exercising, it's like, actually start with yourself, and then you can help other people.
Okay, well, this could not be like better scripted, but it's not, guys. We are going to talk about well-being, and I'm absolutely definitely not going to do this, but I know that you're one of the followers of this ice water sort of mindset breathing. Talk to us about it. You started it in 2022. this crazy notion that it's brilliant for you, but I'm being really facetious. It's just because I've tried it and I'm like, whoa. Talk to us about the benefits of what you've been doing.
Up until me doing it, I was like, I literally, I couldn't have a cold drink, let alone a cold shower, a cold bath. It's so ridiculous. But I mean, I started off with a cold shower, like lasted 4 seconds. I saw the Wim Hof stuff, and I saw that, and then actually, after having a cold shower, I felt a lot more energy, kind of like a spark. I felt my mind clear. Then I got to 10 seconds, I got to 20 seconds, and then I saw the documentary of Wim Hof, and I thought, I'm going to give this a go. Got one of those ice baths, jumped in it, got my feet in there for about 5 seconds, jumped out again. Then I got to my knees. Then I got to below my, and each time, and now I jump in there. I last about 2 minutes. I'm building myself up. Every time I've done it, I come out there like literally bouncing. My energy's 3 times higher. It's like having an all body workout. I think my body shape's improved. My mindset's improved, and it's not easy. But for me personally, if ever I'm feeling a bit cloudy, a bit negative, or a bit down, I jump in there and literally it all dissipates. It's not for everybody. I'm not going to jump on my soapbox and say, but for me personally, and the research is building, that there isn't a negative to doing it.
No. And I was being deliberately facetious at the start. I know. I actually watched the Wim Hof, the one where he did it with all like Gabby.
Yeah, it's brilliant actually.
It was so emotional. It was if you haven't watched it, I don't know if it's still available on iPlayer, but it was absolutely remarkable. And, I think that it's something that's achieved, it's free to do. I've researched a lot, and I'm actually researching it in context of perimenopause, because there's a lot of things that I'm a perimenopausal woman. There'll be a lot of people listening going through menopause, or knowing people that are going through it. This is for men to listen to too, this bit. But actually, things like intermittent fasting, there are things that we can do to diminish not just taking HRT, but to diminish the effects on our bodies. And actually, I think that potentially this method could be very beneficial to women who are going through perimenopause, because it is to do with it's all about hormone balance, and it's all around sort of that physical well-being as well. And I think the fact that you've said that did you say off camera that it can aid weight loss as well? Yeah,
it does. It burns fat, it freezes fat, and also it removes all your toxins as well. So I think if you actually research the benefits of it, there's like 8 amazing benefits. The ones you just talked about, I wasn't aware of course. And don't get me wrong, it's not for the faint-hearted. Believe me, today was like the hard. I did it this morning. It was almost getting harder each time. But I think it's like, it's a bit like, I didn't do my 2 minutes today, but I did about a minute and a half. For me, it's something. If I do a little bit each day,
it's consistency every day, isn't it? It's like working out. When I started doing HIIT 6 years ago, I literally nearly died doing 5 minutes. Right. I've only just started yoga in 2022. I had to, because I got an injury, and I do yoga, and I'm building myself up, and I'm now doing intermediate levels. So but it's that compound effect every single day. So I think that it's a really amazing end to this episode, because having the best well-being, and it's that old cliche that if you don't look after yourself and you don't put on your own oxygen mask first, leader, you cannot give to anybody else. But if you're listening to this and you're not a leader, but you've got a family, or you're a team leader or something like that, or even if you're just running a desk, you can't give to anyone else if you're not giving to yourself first.
I think that's right. I think the employer has a duty of care and responsibility to provide the wellbeing tools and signposts and people and courses and help. But ultimately, you can take a horse to water kind of thing. You can't force it to drink. It's ultimately down to you as an individual to apply yourself and take the action. You can't be pointing fingers at everybody else because of the recession, because of the economy, because of my brother, my sister, my employer. Ultimately, it's down to you.
It is. Oh, we could not end that on a better sentence. Thank you so much, but there is so much to take away from this. There's going to be an awful lot of activity on this. So thank you so much, and we wish you all the best for 2023. Keep us posted on your ice bucket sort of challenge you're getting on with that every day. And we really appreciate you joining us on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much.